everybody, it's Romania Black, and we're on episode 10 of My Hero Academia Season 6, and it's a little chilly this morning, so I poured some coffee and sat down to watch this episode. Yeah. So about the last one, right? That ended on a note. I went back and reread the chapters. I actually had a comment I wanted to talk to you all about because I was not aware of this. I don't really have time to watch other reactors. I really don't. There's maybe like one reactor I'm watching like one series with, and I'm like 10 weeks behind on that series. It's been so busy like with the end of the semester, and I teach, so it's getting to be finals time, so there's a lot of grading going on. So I haven't really had time to really watch much else outside of what I'm watching for this channel. So with that in mind, I wasn't really aware of how the other anime-only people were reacting to this season. I've heard people say good things on Twitter when I've posted different screenshots from the episodes I'm reacting to, so I assumed it was pretty good, and I've been satisfied with this season. But I'm also coming at it from the perspective of someone that's read the manga, so I know the full context, and then I'm seeing it adapted. So I'm not coming from the context of an anime only who has no idea because they've not read the manga. So with that in mind, AZ did have a comment with the last episode that I was like, oh, okay, or with episode 7 rather, saying the anime-onlys did not see in the manga that Bakugo stopped the first bullet that Shigaraki aimed at Aizawa. They only saw the second hit, and I guess some anime-only people were like, well, that first hit just hit him right off the bat. That seems convenient. And I'm like, well, it's Shigaraki. He plays video games. He's got a good shot anyway. But I did go back to chapter 282, which I talked about in the last set, I'm pretty sure. And yeah, there is one page. There is a page, and it's really easy to miss. So I'm almost wondering if the studio just skimmed over it and didn't realize it. Which can happen, but it's one page, and there is a panel where Shigaraki fires the first bullet, and Bakugo leaps in and burns it up and crumbles it, and Endeavor's like, cool, and then Shigaraki fires the second one right after it. Like, they thought there was one deleter round, he destroyed it, but Shigaraki had the other one that he fired right after it. And then on the page that I did reference with the last video, you see Aizawa and them running away. So they were in mid-run. They saw the deleter round. They're like, let's get out of here. But they didn't know the second round was coming, and it hit him in that leg that was all disfigured. So in the context of the manga, it makes a lot of sense. And it still made sense in the anime, but I could totally see where an anime only would be like, oh, that seemed too easy. And I'm like, well... So I'm glad, AZ, you pointed that out and brought that up, because I was like, oh yeah, it wasn't that easy, but it's it seems like it's very easy to overlook that if you're a manga reader and you kind of forgot about it. So yeah. So Bakugo's got hit by Shigaraki. Deku's seen it. I'm sure Deku won't freak out at all. I'm sure he's going to be fine. He's going to be completely calm throughout this. Like I said, I have not reread the manga, so I kind of know what happens this episode, but I'm curious how much we're going to get. Like, what are we going to get? There are bits and pieces that I'm not as familiar with or don't remember as well, so that'll be a lot of fun. And then there's already things I want to talk to y'all in the spoiler corner about, but that's what the spoiler corner is for. We'll save it for then. So... But I'm really excited this morning. I was like, the first thing I woke up this morning, I was like, what do I want to do? I want to watch My Hero Academia. So it's always a good sign when you wake up and you just feel in the mood, right? So with that being said, we are going to start episode 10 of My Hero Academia Season 6. And we're going to do that here in 3, 2, 1, and let's do this, baby! Huh. I honestly forgot. I knew that Toga came back into the story eventually, and I was trying to figure out, I was like, I don't think that Toga ends up with the others at Shigaraki and where Gigantomachia is heading. I was like, I don't think Toga's there for some reason. But I couldn't remember if she got to where Deku and them are and then left, or what happened, so I couldn't remember that. So I was like, okay, yeah, she hops off and is like, I feel like the anime added some things, so it'll be curious in the comments to see if y'all comment about that. I feel like the anime adds a moment between her and Spinner. Maybe not. Maybe that isn't added. Maybe that was in the manga all along, and I haven't read the manga in like over a year, so those chapters specifically, so that could very well be. But here's the thing. The voice acting in this episode was absolutely wonderful between Shigaraki's voice actor, between Deku's didn't have a lot to do, between Shigaraki's voice actor, Toga's voice actress. So good. I mean, Ochako's was good, but Toga's was really good. Like, just nailing those moments. And then All For One. I forget how much I love All For One as a villain. He really is so good. He's like Aizen Sosuke levels of just hammy and wonderful. And Aizen's one of my favorite villains because he's just ridiculous, right? You know, we've memed Aizen Sosuke from Bleach so many times, all according to plan, right? Aizen has like become iconic for that, but he's such a good villain. And I feel like All For One kind of has that same level. Aizen and All For One are both villains that they can be hammy and over the top where you're like, come on. But then they can also be really sinister and threatening, and you're like, no, they could probably do some damage. So I really like both of their characters. And All For One, his voice actor has so much fun. You can just tell how much fun he's having in this episode, delivering these lines, being like the theatrical elder brother, and then the younger brother's like, I've had to deal with this for so long. We'll talk about that between them, but it's such a good episode. But yeah, I've got stuff in the spoiler corners to say, but I'm going to save it. I'm going to try to hold it back. I feel like this episode was very much like just the last episode had everything ramping up with Aizawa being shot and Deku like trying to just pummel Shigaraki, right? And then Bakugo, kind of like the climax of it all is Bakugo being like, the catalyst that leads to the climax is Bakugo like getting stabbed. And then Deku, I will say this, I will say this, I don't consider it a spoiler, but I do think the manga maybe handles Deku's rage a little bit better than this, but it happens so fast. It goes so fast in this episode that I think if you go back and read chapters like 283, go back and read chapters 283, maybe it's 286 is where we left off at. Around the time where this episode starts, chapter-wise in the manga, if you go back and read it, it's like, I think it's 286 maybe, and double check that, but I feel like if you go back and read that the manga has a little more time and page space to like let Deku's rage at Bakugo being hit like just air out. And here it's like we gotta go do things and get to. But the climax of this battle is, or seemingly the climax of this battle is seemingly Deku and Shigaraki and All For One and One For All meeting together for the first time all together, and then trying to see if Shigaraki is going to be able to get the quirk. That seems to be the climax of this battle right now, because when it ends and Deku's like, please stop moving, it almost seems like we're hitting the resolution of like, okay, the question is, where do we go to from here? If that's the case, because Gigantomachia is on his way. It's the thing where Gigantomachia is on his way as Deku and Bakugo, as Deku, Bakugo, Shigaraki, and them are all the battle's falling apart. It's concluding, but Gigantomachia isn't even there yet. So it's like, once he gets there, what's going to happen? So, but yeah, let's talk about this episode. I am like, at least the recap's only like a minute long. I'm like, I'm never really a fan of recaps in anime, but what can we do? But yeah, Bakugo, we just cut straight back to that. Bakugo flying in. And I feel like, and of course Deku's like, what the hell? I feel like in the manga this time, this moment had a little more air to breathe, because he's like, that line is so crucial where Bakugo's like, don't try to win by yourself. That line, it happens so early on in the episode, and it's so easy to gloss over it with everything else that's going on. But that line is so crazy coming from Bakugo, of all people. Bakugo saying that. Bakugo, the guy that was like, I can handle this on my own and be the number one hero by myself, and I don't need you scrubs. Like, for Bakugo to say, don't try to win by yourself, Deku. Character development, right? Character development. It's fascinating that it's Bakugo telling him that, being like, look, I know you, Deku, and you'll kill yourself if you try to do this all on your own, so don't. You can rely on others to help you. But as he's getting impaled saying that, you know, and Deku's just like, what the hell? And then, yeah, Bakugo just, and of course, then the smoke and stuff rises off of Shigaraki, and he just falls. And, oh my god, like, Shoto! Look at Shoto! Just coming in clutch. I give Shoto Todoroki a hand, because he is not only grabbing Bakugo, who is a beefcake in himself, with one damn arm. He is holding his beefcake father with the other arm. I'm like, Shoto did not skip arm or leg day or core day. He is like all about this. I freaking love it. But Deku, he's just like, and then I do like that we see Shigaraki like slowly growing his hair back. It's kind of crazy because when he has like his hair growing back, Shigaraki does, and it's just like little and spiky like that, he kind of looks a little bit like All For One, right? Which the curious thing in all this is that Shigaraki looks a lot like Nana, right? And kind of a little bit like the younger brother. And then here he looks kind of like the older brother. So it's interesting. But I've got to say, I feel so bad because I give Bones, I think Bones needs a little bit of a pass on this. Because yes, when you look at Deku, who is in a state of shock that Bakugo has been injured, and he's just sitting there with this like goldfish look on his face, he does kind of look dumb. But I'm going to defend Bones a little bit in the fact that the way Horikoshi draws him in the manga looks really weird too. It's very weird, and and you get what it's supposed to look like. It's supposed to be distorted, and it's supposed to like show Deku like just being ripped apart from the inside, and then you see Shigaraki literally having the same thing happen to him. But Horikoshi draws that so weird in the manga that the moment I saw that we'll talk about it in spoilers, but the moment that we saw Deku starting to get enraged, I was like, well, what can Bones do? They can't make him look pretty. They can't make him look madder because Horikoshi doesn't. So it does look weird. If an anime only was like, man, the animation looks really weird there, it looks weird in the manga. So it's not totally Bones' fault. And we'll get that further here in a second. But then we have one of the users with Black Whip telling him that if you use your power in anger, the power is going to react to that. Well, Deku gets freaked out because he says what's important is controlling your heart, and Deku kind of loses control for just a split second here. He loses control. Shigaraki's like, man, I didn't have to hurt Bakugo, but look what you made me do. And it's like, and then Deku freaks out, and then he freaks out, and oh my gosh, as he goes up against Shigaraki and starts like punching through the tendrils, right? Now I will say this. Having read the manga, I did go back before starting the discussion and looking at the chapter. The image of Deku eating through the tendrils coming out of Shigaraki's fingers, it does look much more badass in the manga. That scene looks a lot better in the manga. But the one where Deku's like got the eyes all distorted, it's weird in the manga. I don't blame Bones for like being crazy with it, you know. And the thing of it is, everybody in the comments on Twitter is like, I wonder if we'll have all these terrifying moments in broad daylight under a clear blue sky. And I see where people get that from, because on the one hand, you aesthetically want it to look grim and dark and have like blood red skies and look ominous. But then on the other hand, it is during daylight, and this is as realistic of a story as we can be. So it's like apples and oranges. I do know what they're talking about for some scenes that are yet to come, though. And I hear you. I agree with you. But will Bones, I don't know. He says, take it back. I will not get over how freaking creepy it is that Shigaraki's face rips open and there's All For One inside of it. That is still one of the freakiest, creepiest images in this series. I'm like, Horikoshi, that feels like Bleach. That feels like Bleach. I'm like, Horikoshi, what are we doing? Like, it's so creepy. And I know that it's meant to be like, in some vein, a metaphor of All For One being like shining through Shigaraki. But then on the other hand, it's like, is he really there? It's like, ugh. But yeah, him putting his face. And of course, Shoto. I like that Shoto's like, no, Midoriya, no. And then he starts to take the power, right? He starts to take it. But then Deku fights back, right? And we like warp speed to the inner realm. I love the purple and green contrast. It's really nice, the purple and green comparison. And Eren Yeager ain't got nothing on Deku's 8-pack. In the manga, I remember when this chapter came out, everybody was like, damn, Deku. And it's like, well, you know, he has trained and worked out all this time to be able to withstand All For One for All's power. So yeah, he would be ripped, right? I feel like it's like a Demon Slayer moment. If you've ever watched Demon Slayer, there's a moment in that series where Tanjiro and Deku are very similar protagonists. But there's a moment where Tanjiro is training, and you get to see, like, he's wearing all these robes throughout Demon Slayer, so you can't really see what he looks like. And then when he's training, it takes off, you're like, wow, he's ripped. And it's like, given the circumstance, of course they would be. But yeah, old naked Deku getting naked right now in the other world. I feel like Shigaraki's not naked, though, which is kind of interesting. Want to make note, for you Baku-Deku shippers out there, the first person Deku asks about is, where's Kacchan? That is canon. So take that and do with it what you will. Shoto's like, I'm over here like, what? I saved your boo and you ain't gonna recognize where I am? But then Shigaraki gets to keep his pants in this world. Oddly enough. But, oh god. The symbolism of both, you have All For One with his hand atop Shigaraki's head, and then you have Nana with her hand atop Deku. But then you also have, it kind of gets complicated because then you have Nana and the symbolism of her hand over the top of Shigaraki. It's fascinating, right? I feel like you have Nana trying to, like, keep control and help with Deku, and then you have All For One doing the same thing with Shigaraki. It's so creepy to see him coming out of Shigaraki's body, and he's just being like, if you hadn't used me, you would have died. And the way that he just is like, crouching over him like a damn vulture, it's so creepy. And Shigaraki's just like, shut up, I don't want to talk to you anymore. This is my dream. It's so funny that Shigaraki is still trying to say that all of this is his goal and his dream, when clearly we, the audience, are seeing that no, a lot of this is influenced by All For One. And Shigaraki, a part of it's like, yeah, he's trying to reform Hero Society because of his own experience. But at this point in time, Shigaraki is like, he doesn't realize or seems to acknowledge just how much influence All For One has had on him. And it's fascinating, right? He's very much still convinced that he's in control, not All For One. And Deku's just looking like, what did I sign up for? Why am I watching this? And he literally goes towards, the thing of it is, he goes towards Shigaraki. Deku makes the attempt to go towards him, not run away, but go towards him like he wants to help him. Deku, our boy. And then Nana shows up. That image, I've always loved Nana crouched beside him, being like, yeah, you can't do anything in this world yet. That still is like just the idea that he one day, if he dies, will become part of that world and pass it on to someone else. It's like, it's kind of crazy. So then we go back to the evacuation of the city. I will say, Gigantomachia recognizing that there are two masters now is interesting. Because before it was just one, and now it's interesting because he recognizes both All For One is there and Shigaraki, but also two, Gigantomachia is recognizing that he has two masters. All For One is not his only master anymore. It's Shigaraki as well. And you can make the argument that was established back with the whole Redestro arc. Makes sense, but I still find it interesting. I will be honest, if you told me that you weren't happy about the animation of all the heroes going to rescue and do the evacuation, it is a little cheap, the animation. I do love the one guy on the skateboard that's like got a trench coat and looks like Redestro on a floating skateboard. Best hero. I love him. Give him a spin-off series. And there's a guy that looks like Exless meets Martian Manhunter. You got one of those. Nejiro looks like, so Nejiro's going towards Shigaraki, and so is Ida. Real quick. I love, of course, Nejiro going, she has powers that could work, and she could help lift everybody up and get them out of there. Makes sense that she would go. Ida's super fast. He could go and carry some heroes too. That's a good idea. But I just want to make note that Ida, when she's like, what are you going for? And he's like, I have 3 classmates who haven't returned yet, which are Bakugo, Deku, and Shoto. And then he's like, 2 of them are good friends who set me on the right path. And the other one's Bakugo. Bakugo's just like sitting in Shoto's arms being like, thanks, Ida. I know he doesn't mean anything bad or salty about it. It's just kind of hilarious that he doesn't follow up with saying anything about Bakugo. He just says, yeah, 2 of them, Shoto and Deku, are like some of my best friends. And yeah, Bakugo's there. Absolutely hilarious. I freaking love it. It's great. And then Ochako is still wondering like what is going on during the midst of all this evacuation. This whole confrontation between Nana and All for One is fascinating because she's like, oh look, it's the guy that killed me. Sup? And she's like, All for One. And Deku's like, oh, it's the one, it's All Might's master. Okay. It's Nana, the seventh wielder. And God, Tomura, with All for One with him, he goes, look at that, Tomura. It's amazing. A dead person. Oh my God. All for One is off his rocker. He is off his rocker. He sometimes comes across as like a man-child. Like there's sometimes where he comes across as just being like so childish and like trapped almost in it, right? Because he talks about everything like it's a comic book, like he does the villainous monologues. His sense of humor is dark and kind of twisted. And sometimes he comes across as really immature, and it's like, and then meanwhile you have his younger brother who is very meek and quiet but comes across as more mature, and it's like, what the heck? But that line, look, a dead person. Your grandmother, the incompetent, pitiful Nana Shimura, is right there. Like, he always loves to insult her. Like, even there was that little short before the first My Hero Academia movie, there was, like, the All Might Rising. Basically, it was, like, All Might Rising. But it was where Nana died, and he was just, like, All for One was so cruel to her. Like, I'm like, dude, were you cruel to all the users, or are you a misogynist? What is this? Leave her alone. And Nana's just like... Or was she actually not incompetent and he just tries to make her seem that way? He's like, it's transference. So the idea of transferring consciousness over, and he tries to apply this like thing he learned from the doctor about organ transplants and how the cells have a consciousness of their own and they can change a person that receives them. So it's the idea that Deku has received all of these spirits inside of them and they've kind of changed his being, which they haven't. That's the kind of crazy thing, is that All for One suggests that inheriting, now the quirks have all changed. The quirks have stockpiled and evolved over time, but the consciousness and the personality of the user has not, because Deku's still the same person he's always been. So it's a little different than what he's suggesting. And the fact that All for One, I will say this, All for One talking about like where the dreams of the original owners of the quirks he stole like come and haunt him in his dreams. That's kind of freaky, right? That's kind of freaky, but you'd think it would change your ways, but it does not with him at all. And he's like, once I get rid of the quirks, then it's no big deal. It's kind of freaky, so it suggests that like he just gets rid of the quirks, so he doesn't have to deal with it anymore. And he's like, strange, isn't it? I am the type to hold grudges after all. It's like, oh, so yeah, you hold grudges. You got mad at All Might and took All Might's master's grandchild under your wing to completely corrupt him and become your vessel because you wanted to spite All Might amidst other reasons. What? Hold grudges? What? Yeah, and the thing about it is that All for One seems to hold all these grudges over time, but his brother is just like, no. I don't care. And Shigaraki seems to hold grudges, but we'll talk more about that later. Or he seems to hold grudges as well, so it's kind of similar. Whereas Deku doesn't come across as a type to hold grudges. It's fascinating. And he's like, thanks to my power to directly meddle with quirks, I have the special ability to perceive those consciousnesses. And then meanwhile, Shigaraki has been wondering, he's been thinking about Gran Torino's words, and he realizes that Nana is the one that kind of was the catalyst to everything. And the thing about it is, Nana, in reality, probably does care about Shigaraki quite a lot, but he only associates with her the memory. It's sad because the memory of her, he associates with all this pain. Like, she's kind of the catalyst that led to all these bad things happening, right? And again, when you look at the flashback of her son, it's like, of Hotaru, her son, you see he kind of has the Gran Torino thing, just saying. But he associates her trying to be on top of his head just like All for One, and so he can't associate a good memory with her because she's kind of the part of all of his pain. It's really sad. And she tells him in the memory to not forget. And then Shigaraki's like, why are you here? Why do you do this? And that kind of is, I love All for One's like, Let the hate flow through you, Shigaraki. He's like damn Emperor Palpatine from Star Wars. He's like, yes, Shigaraki, your hatred, let it flow through you. It'll make you powerful. It's like, oh my god. He is. He's like Palpatine. Aizen Sosuke, all for one, Palpatine. That same level of menacing, sinister ham. And I'm all here for it. But yeah, Shigaraki saying that, you know, he's like, you're my grandmother. But he's like, don't worry, I hate you too. He's like, I can't, he has no memory of her. All I remember about you is that you weren't there and you caused my father to hate me and nothing good came from your memory. So for Shigaraki, she is kind of a source of his pain as well. And so he can't appreciate and love her. It's like, damn it, no! It's like, but you're so much like her. And then, yeah, and what gets me is that Tomura, or not, I keep calling him All for One Tomura, where he's like, come on, he's like, steal the quirk and everything. He's like, let the power flow through you. Let your anger encroach onto it. And what I love about it is that all of a sudden the decay spreads up into All for One, and he goes, oh, that's right. Whoops. Oh, right. You hate me too. Just, he's like, oh, that's right. You don't like me as well. Oh, yeah, I forgot. Oh, my God. It's just, All for One. What the hell? He's like, excellent. He's like, that's what it means to be a symbol of fear. The thing about it is that All for One does not care if Shigaraki hates him or not, because he's like, if you hate me, that's just going to build your hatred even more. He's like, yeah, sure, you're going to become a symbol of fear, and in order to do that, you have to be full of hatred. So yes, go ahead, hate me all you want. And it's like, oh my God. And then the hot brother shows up with his green eyes, yeah, and his white hair. Is that boy next big brother? And All for One's like, well, it's your fault. All these people have to suffer because you won't surrender yourself to me. It's like, what I love is that these brothers are so different. The little brother and him, he's like, no. And there's a part of me that's like, that, you know, All for One probably loved his brother, and him not being there is problematic to him, but at the same time he's like become so corrupt over time and he's just lost his way entirely. But at the heart of it, I wonder if he still loves his little brother, and that's why he wants to have his power. Not necessarily to have the power, but he just talked about how the people he stole quirks from, their consciousness greets him. And so there's a part of me that wonders if he really wants to steal One for All because he wants to see his brother again, because he's gone all this time without seeing his only family. That's the only reason he wants it, is so he can be with his brother. It would kind of give All for One at the end of the day, if All for One does die, and we find out that his whole purpose was just to be with his brother. That'd be interesting. That would be very interesting. I would be curious about that. But meanwhile, so Nana and the brother, the little brother, they combine their powers to watch over Deku and to cancel out the decay and force Shigaraki back. And Shigaraki makes note, he's like, well, this checks out because the one thing that All for One couldn't take was One for All. The one thing that didn't go his master's way. And he's like, what is this? He's like, what's this power? What's this rainbow power of love you're sticking on me? And All for One says exactly that. He says, it's power. He's like, but if we work together, we can steal it. Right? Oh my gosh. After all, they're just a few dead people who lost to me. And that's all he wants to recognize them as. And he says, little brother, you said you've chosen. And he's like, stop acting tough. You know. He's like, I was watching. And he tries to trash talk Deku and be like, this kid's weak. He can't do anything. And the whole time he's monologuing, Deku is staring right at Shigaraki, like, just staring at him and seeing Shigaraki in pain. And Deku's like, you are being controlled so much by All for One. I mean, he's doing a lot on his own volition, but you're kind of stuck with him like a parasite. And then I love that the brother says it wasn't a mistake choosing Deku, and that gets All for One to shut up, where he's like, which I feel like it was a hollow threat anyway. I mean, he's like, no. He's like, you can only use others, so you don't understand what it's like for people to sacrifice for someone besides themselves. And that's the thing. All for One is so petty and conceited and does things just for himself that he doesn't understand what it's like for someone to be self-sacrificing. And the little brother's like, no, Deku is the most self-sacrificing person imaginable. So it's like he self-sacrifices so much, it's kind of an enigma. And he's like, you just don't understand. He's like, that's why we protect him and why we've chosen him. It's like, and then for Deku to lunge, he lunges at Shigaraki, and then that's when they get separated. And no, his power wasn't stolen. And then all for one is catty, right? He's very catty. He's like, well, we couldn't steal the power, not because they were stronger than us. No, we couldn't steal the power because you weren't complete. That's why. So you just need to retreat, Shigaraki. Go regain your strength and retreat, and then we'll get him next time, Spider-Man. You know, that's exactly what he's saying. He's like, we just need to retreat. Classic superhero comic book plot point where it's like, well, the battle was an impasse, so like we're gonna go regain our strength and then come back and fight you. Interestingly enough. But meanwhile, we go back to Gigantomachia, who is rummaging through the city headed towards Shigaraki, and Skeptic, who's been sitting there like being like, Wi-Fi's not easy over here, is just trying to find things out and discovers that Endeavor is with all of them on the battlefield. And Dobby's like, that's good, let's get ready. And Skeptic's like, to do what? He's like, to destroy this fake hero society. And he just looks pleased as punch. Dobby just looks amazing. I want to make note, the animators of Bones, they've made Deku look a little derpy perhaps, but Dobby, they've made him and Shigaraki look pretty damn good in this whole season. Dobby's their favorite. They love to animate him, and I'm not going to be opposed to that. But what I like about this whole scene up here on Gigantomachia, like camped out on his back, is that Mr. Compress, he even has a little moniker in the name, where he tells Toga, he's like, hey Toga, he's like, hey, you know, we looked for your friend. He's like, you were looking for your friends back there, weren't you? Those whippersnappers at UA, Deku and Ochako, you were looking for them, weren't you? Did you find them? Are you okay? You've been awfully quiet this whole time. You're usually not like that. You know, I like Compress is trying to like check in on her, and this whole time she's just been in a daze since Twice died, which, can you blame her? Her and Twice were like really close, and Twice compared to them. And so she makes this comment, and it is a really interesting comment where she's like, what makes people a hero? She's like, is it just saving people? Because Twice saved people. Was he not a hero? And it's like, and it gives, you're like, on the one hand, you're like, well, technically, yeah, but he also killed a bunch of people too. So Toga has this very warped perception of good versus evil. Toga's perception is pretty warped. And so she's questioning, like, why do heroes... She's kind of, in a way, she's doing the same thing that Twice was doing. Twice was commenting, why is it the heroes just save good people? Why does that make them heroes? And so here she's thinking, like, well, she's like, heroes are supposed to save people. Are they going to kill me? How does that make them a hero? So it's kind of... Toga's thoughts are kind of scattered and all over the place, but what she's getting at from... when I view this conversation she's having with Mr. Compress, is she's saying, these heroes aren't supposed to kill people. That's what makes you a villain, right? If you kill someone, you're a villain. So how can it be that these heroes were able to kill Twice and still be called heroes? She's calling out a double standard, is what she's calling. She's saying, well, she's like, Twice saved people. He saved me. But he's still a villain because he killed someone. And that supersedes and outweighs his heroic deeds. And she's like, but they killed Twice, so why aren't they villains? Why isn't that superseding for them than it is for us? And so she's calling out an interesting point. And there's lots of layers to it. And you could argue it comes down to, well, morally, though, you are the League of Villains and you all think it's fine for people to die. And you're happy with killing people if it means justifying the ends to your means. Whereas Ochako and them, like, killing is a last resort. It's not what you start out with. It's the last possible option. And Toga's trying to say that you can't do that. Toga's trying to create an absolute where you either only save people and are heroes, or you only kill people and you're villains. But what's this in between? How do you mix it? Toga's trying to figure out what the mix is when she's been dealing with absolutes. And it is complicated, but I mean, obviously there is a moral layer to it that she's kind of ignoring. And I love that Mr. Compress, whenever we turn back over to him, he's just like, and you don't know what he's thinking because you can't see his face. It's great. It's absolutely great. But she's like, I want to find that out. I want Ochako to tell me. I want her to tell me why this is, why they're able to kill twice and still be heroes. And so, meanwhile, they're just going to the city and the heroes are trying to stop and save everybody. I do like this one image of the heroes like rescuing, like the parents are just like walking there, and then you have the walrus carrying the kids. It's kind of cute. Some of the animation of the civilians and the little heroes, it's actually adorable. I kind of like it. But I love Skeptic this whole time. Skeptic this whole time has been so hilarious with his laptop where he's just been sitting there like, I've been doing so much stuff for you all and you're not grateful. I actually love Skeptic an awful lot. Other than Redestro, he may be my favorite of the Liberation Front. I just love Skeptic. He's such a snark. And he's just like, I can only pull up 3 cameras because the other ones have been destroyed. The Wi-Fi sucks here. What are you guys doing? I love how stressed he is throughout all of this. And Dobby doesn't care. Compress and Spinner seem like they're still motivated. Toga's kind of, her mind has wandered. Dobby is just sitting here like fanboying over the idea of seeing Endeavor and the others. And so it's just, But yeah, I like Toga's like, I want to go. Give me your gear. And Compress has always had this like kind of weird like pseudo perverted thing with Toga, because Toga's a kid. She's still like, what, 15 or 16? And he's like, oh, you're making an old man blush. Leave me alone. It's like, he kind of has, Mr. Compress kind of has, maybe not perverted, but he has a very gentle criminal vibe to him. Compress does. He does. Yeah, he has a very gentle criminal vibe to him where he's very gentlemanly and but just kind of quirky and odd, right? That's, Mr. Compress is the villain version of gentle criminal. And Toga's like, I'm gonna go. And I love the Compress is like, Dobby, say something. Stop grinning. Stop having so much fun. And just being lost in your daydreams and your fantasies, right? But I like that Spinner is the one that connect with her. Spinner's like, hey, you and I, Dobby's over there having a good time. We were all misfits who just happened to find each other. And we were brought together with Shigaraki. And he's like, the boss wants us all to go together. And we're experts at doing whatever. I love he says we're experts at doing whatever the hell we want. That's part of it. He's like, just make sure you come back. Because he's like, I'm not going to stop you. Just don't forget about us. I kind of love that for Spinner. I do. I like that moment. And I like that as soon as she leaves, Compress is like, I didn't think you'd like let her go. And he's like, she wouldn't have listened. Like now, Spinner just tries to frame it in a way that she'll come back. He's like, I can't stop you from going, so please come back to us. Don't run off on your own and not return, right? And so then Ochako, I was wondering at this point when Froppy saves the people, when the old lady comes in, I was like, oh, that's Toga, isn't it? But I was trying to see like how far we got to it. I couldn't remember if we saw the moment. If I couldn't remember when Ochako goes into the building, if we saw the old lady's body there. I can't remember in the manga if the old lady's body is shown to us and that Toga did kill her. Presumably she killed her because she had to have her blood. So, but maybe she was already dead. Can she take blood from a dead person? I think she can though. Yeah, I think she can take blood from a dead person. She can. So for all we know, that adds another layer to it, right? Because Toga comes out, which I love that. I love Toga like turning around and she's like, oh, don't worry. I'll definitely save him. And she's like, oh, you will? She's like, really? You'll save them? And Ochako's like, oh my God, Toga. And she's like, long time no see, Ochako. The way she says long time no see, Ochako is great. I love that. I love how she phrases it. It's wonderful. But here's the thing. When she finally like gets a hold of her, Toga's like, what do you want to do to me? She's like, do you want to kill me like Jin was killed? Am I going to be killed? Ochako, what do you want to do to me? And I love that Ochako's like, you came here just to ask that? And so that's so crazy because, yeah, from Toga's perspective, this is the defining question. Like, are you going to be, you say you're a hero, but are you going to kill me if you had to? Would you kill me? Like, that's, Toga wants to know this question. And in Ochako's mind, Ochako doesn't know who Jin is. She has no idea what's going on. She just knows that she's supposed to be saving these people, and Toga has come to interrupt her from doing this task just to ask, like, a hypothetical question. And Ochako's like, you came here just to ask me a question? Like, what? Why? But to Toga, when she says, just... And Ochako's like, you ask that, just to ask that. She's like, to find out the answer to a question that has not even come up yet and hasn't even been considered. You killed an old lady just to do that? She says to take the blood of an old lady. She said you took the blood of that old lady. She does say you killed her just for that. But that's the thing. Did she kill her? Did she kill her? I don't know. Because wasn't it that Ochako could take blood from dead people and use it too? I feel like she could, right? I feel like she could. So maybe she didn't kill her and Ochako just assumed that. I don't know. We don't know, right? And you killed her just for that. And she's like, just. So it's Toga. Toga gets, you can tell Toga is kind of mad because she's like, to Toga, this is an important question. This is like framing, this is something really important. Like, what do I do with this knowledge? It's going to frame her actions. And to Ochako, she's just viewing it as, I've got a job to do and you're asking me something that's not even come into the equation yet. Not important. So it's fascinating to see how their ideas of what matters and doesn't matter is brought up. And she's like, I just want to save as many people as possible right now, and you're in my way. You need to get out of the way. She's like, if you're going to get in my way, and she kicks her off, then I'll catch you right now. She's like, if you're going to be in the way, fine, I'll catch you. But she's not going to kill her. That's the thing. And I think that to Toga, that kind of answers her question. Ochako's like, I will catch you. I'm not going to kill you. And I can't remember what happens after this. So as far as that storyline goes. So it'll be fun to see what actually ends up happening because I honestly don't remember. But I know that Ochako's not going to kill her because that's not in Ochako's nature. I can't remember if Toga realizes that and if that does something or what we do with that storyline. So, but really good voice acting from Toga's voice actress. Really good voice acting. I have spoilers to talk about, but I need to talk about those spoilers when we get to them. So I do want to talk about spoilers for a little bit, but first, if you're not sticking around for the spoiler corner, I hope you all have a wonderful week. Please stay safe. Take care. And I'll see you all next week with episode 11 of season 6 of My Hero Academia. For those of you sticking around, it's coming. Next week it's here. I don't care. At this point, I don't care. I don't care if Bones. Someone said this on Twitter, and I was like, oh my god, no, you're so right, but I don't care. Someone said on Twitter because everybody's freaking out because next week's episode title, I've been told on YouTube, I've been told on the Discord, I've been told on Patreon or on Twitter. Everybody's like, so episode 11 is called Dobby's Dance. And I was like, it's next week. Next week is Dobby's Dance. Christmas comes early. I'll have to wear a Christmas sweater to celebrate because it's come early. But I told someone on Twitter, I was like, you know what? I honestly at this point would not be surprised I wouldn't be surprised at this point if we watch the episode and Dobby's dance, like in the manga, he's like got this big salsa dance thing going on. He's like, come father, dance with me in hell. Someone on Twitter was like, it's just gonna be a still shot of Dobby like doing this and they're just gonna like rotate it back and forth and have like the zoom in bars and it's not gonna have any animation at all. And while that would suck so much and would be such a letdown, at this point I'm like, no, I just need Dobby's actor to go crazy and be like, come dance with me in hell, father. I've waited years for this and it's next week. Oh my god. I've waited at least a year. ever since that moment happened, I was like, I want to see it animated, and we're getting here. Honestly, this episode, I've talked a long time about this episode. This episode is just to get, it is a transition episode. That's the craziest thing about it. I was holding myself back because there were several moments in this episode I wanted to talk about spoilers, and I was like, damn it, you can't talk about it. You can't talk about it. You can't talk about it. But there's lots of spoilery moments in here and foreshadowing of what's to come, right? So I do think that it is very curious. I was trying to hold back from talking about Deku when he looks at Shigaraki in the vision world, and he's looking at him and like zoning in. That's the moment Deku realized. The moment that Shigaraki looked like he's in pain and All For One's like sitting here monologuing, the moment that Deku locks eyes with Shigaraki and sees him, that is the moment that he decides, I've got to save Shigaraki. And we're going to cut back to it later on. But I didn't want to talk about it in the episode. I wanted to bring it up, but I was like, no, it's a spoiler. I can't talk about it yet. But you can just tell in that moment that that's it. I also wanted to talk about, some people on Twitter were already dogging this episode before it came out. They were like, we don't get to see Danger Sense. We do. We see the little lightning bolt, and I almost spoiled it in the reaction. I was like, So we do see Danger Sense. It's a little lightning bolt. I still maintain that I can't totally be mad at Bones because Horikoshi does draw that weird, and it doesn't even look like the My Hero Academia that we know. So I get why Horikoshi does it. It's to distort it and make Deku look frightening, but it is weird. And so the way, I'm sure the Bones animators were like, this isn't how we normally draw Deku. What do we do? There are parts of that fight that I think could have been animated better, but the Danger Sense moment, I'm like, no, it's weird in the manga. People speculated about that little lightning bolt for months before we even found out what Danger Sense was. People were like, what was that lightning bolt? And like speculating endlessly about it. And then we find out it was a quirk, and it's like, okay, confirmed. But I was fine with it. I do still love, I do honestly forget what all we've gotten about the two brothers at this point. I do maintain that I think it would be ironic if at the end of this manga we find out that All For One just wanted to be with his brother. He just wanted to steal his quirk so that he could have that consciousness inside of him. And he could be with him. Because All For One is one. He's very much alone. And so that idea that he's lonely and just wants companionship, but he doesn't know how to make a friend. It's like, that's been the goal. All For One just didn't know how to make a friend. But yeah, the voice acting was so good in this. Again, I'm fully convinced that Shigaraki is Gran Torino's grandson. I do think it's ironic that the younger brother looks an awful lot like Shigaraki if he was like a BL character. It's great. And then that smile from All For One is just so iconic, that big cheesy smile, which in the manga now we know what his face looks like, and it's like, I don't know. My Dad For One theories have kind of fizzled out, but it's fine. And then, yeah, I still laugh at that part where he's like, oh, right, you hate me too. It's like, God. But yeah, so anyway, yeah, this episode was really good, but Dobby, I almost spoiled it too because Dobby was like sitting there being like, oh, Endeavor's there? Wonderful. Like, he's just sitting there fantasizing about how it becomes abundantly clear in this episode that all Dobby has been doing the entire episode while Compress and Spinner and Toga are having this deep philosophical conversation about Nakama and friendship and heroes, and Dobby's just sitting there like, when am I going to pull out the bottle? When am I going to dance? What is my father's reaction going to be? How is Shoto going to react? Like, he's just sitting here, like, planning out his theatrical debut, and they're just all having this big existential conversation. It's amazing. I will simp for Dobby's pettiness and his diva theater kid dramatism all day long. I freaking love it. But yeah, the Toga conversation, I know that Toga doesn't really get the answer that she wants. Her storyline is rather interesting, honestly. It's rather interesting. And we haven't really gotten a resolution in the manga with it. So, but oh my God, y'all. I watched the preview before starting this discussion, and I was like, it has taken ever since I found out that next episode is called Dobby's Dance, it's taken every ounce of my being to not talk about it and be like, hold it in. I was like, the anime onlys. I'm like, no, y'all don't understand. You don't understand. We're going to talk about next week because it has been a long time coming. And I remember we were reading the manga and everybody was freaking out being like, this is it. It's like the Michael Scott meme where everybody's like, oh my God, it's happening. Yeah. So yeah. I do think, though, going back and rewatching this episode, it does become apparent that this is very much a transition episode. And it's funny, again, I was trying not to spoil in this reaction, but it's funny because the battle ends. Shoto has Endeavor and Bakugo. Bakugo's injured, but it's not fatal. He's probably okay. He'll probably make it. Deku is like falling to the ground. I'm sure Shoto will catch him too. Shigaraki is seemingly out, which not quite. But it seems like the wrap up of the battle. And so reading the manga, you're like, wow, everything's kind of coming to an end. But Gigantomachia is not even there yet. So what do we do? How could we finish out this cour? With Dobby, of course. He's been building it up this entire time. He's been stewing in the wings this whole season. And that has been the one nice thing is rewatching this animated. You can kind of see the crumbs Horikoshi has left. And you've seen how Dobby slowly built this up over time. And it's just all building the next episode. And the whole thing this episode was Skeptic, getting all the wireless and stuff set up. And it makes sense now why Dobby brought him along was to record all of this and to program it to all be broadcast right when Dobby has planned this Shakespearean revenge for like ages. And ever since the start of the season, Dobby saw Skeptic and was like, you're going to be needed. And so he has been plotting this Shakespearean revenge against Endeavor and has had Skeptic this whole time setting up. He's like, you're going to broadcast this right at the most dramatic, perfect point possible. What a damn diva. And I'm so freaking excited. I'm excited for a lot of things. I'm excited for the second cour. Dobby's dance is about, I think, the end of the cour halfway because there'll be one episode after that. And it's like, we know what's going to happen in that episode. Which is going to be great. A great way to round out the cour. And then the second cour I'm all excited for as well. So, God, this season's got a lot of good stuff in it. So, and we're about to hit the next little wind of it, right? So, those are my spoilers. I'm freaking excited for next week. I hope you all are too. But in the meantime, I hope you all have a great week yourselves. Stay safe, take care. Next week's gonna be fun. But in the meantime, I'll talk to y'all again soon with more My Hero Academia. Bye.